Okay, I'm recording. This is Wednesday the 18th, and we got sirens outside. I don't know if you can hear it. Last time I wasn't here, I posted an assignment, but this time I'd like to do a video because not only was I not here, but other people weren't here, and other people aren't here now. There's one person who just got switched into the class, and maybe if that person wants to get caught up, I can say, hey, check out the videos. So what we had was an outline. We're going to make a story, and you guys, hey, look, 4 people turned it in. Doesn't matter. We're going to have you guys plan before you write, because if you just start with the blank doc, it's pretty easy to run out of steam and to say like, oh, you know what? I wish I had set up something different in the beginning, or I wish I had come up with a plan. And then it's kind of hard to start over or to know what to do. But if you have a little bit, you always know what you can do next. So this stuff is not everything that's going to happen in your story. For example, if you are writing in a certain style, you might describe the land and the trees and the birds flying above and the river before you even get to the characters. Okay, that's what John Steinbeck loves to do. If you read Of Mice and Men or East of Eden in English class, you might see he always loves to talk about the Salinas River, and that works for him. If you're a certain kind of style, you might write about the characters' clothes and their style and their fashion and their attitude, and maybe that is a big part of your story, especially the beginning, but that's not included in here, and I'm not saying you can't do that. I'm just saying we need certain core things. If you're doing a fantasy story, you might have to describe how does the magic work, and okay, this world has wizards, but it also has elves, and they are different rules and so on. That's fine. So the stuff that we're getting in this outline is not everything. It's just some core stuff, and if you know what this core stuff is, you'll be able to mix in anything else you want. You might introduce a character and talk about their family history and their grandparents and their their house, like Game of Thrones style or whatever. Beginning, you got your main character, and what do they want? Okay, it might start small, it might change later, but we got to know something at the beginning. Sort of like if it's a video game, there'd be an objective pop up on the screen. It's like, okay, maybe it's just get out of the room that you started in, or maybe it's like, defeat the emperor or something. But at least we know once we have something. And we know if things bring us closer to that goal, we know that they're good and we might feel good about them. Or if things take us away, then we know maybe the character's going to react negatively. Are there any important characters around? Somebody on your side, somebody not. Tell us that early on. It's weird if they show up near the end, like, oh, by the way, I'm your best friend. We don't want to do that. We want to have them early on. And what's the first thing your character tries to achieve their goal? They have some kind of objective and they try something. And it's not going to work, because then the story would be over and it'd be boring. But they're going to try one thing first. Middle, something goes wrong, they have to react, and there's some opposing force. It might be another character, it might be nature, it might be society, who knows. And by the way, it does not have to be a villain. You could have 2 characters clash, even if they're both reasonable, or both nice, or both just okay. And then how do the other important characters respond? They escalate. One person tries, another person tries harder, and it goes up and up until there's some kind of climax where you can't escalate anymore. Maybe somebody loses the fight, or somebody gives up and leaves, or somebody changes or surrenders, or who knows what, but there's a change. And your character doesn't stay the way they were at the beginning. They might get better and grow up and mature and become a full self as part of some hero's journey, or they could get worse and it's a tragedy, Or they could change in some subtle way, but they shouldn't stay exactly the same. Maybe the other characters change too. Maybe the world changes too, but that's not always part of it. We'll see how it goes. One reason why it's nice to plan the end is that then you can go back and fix up the beginning. If you think they're going to use a certain weapon, then you can mention it early on. If you think they're going to need a certain character to help and like show up and rescue them, then you can mention that person early on. If your character is going to end up in a really strange place, like emotionally they're going to be super aggressive or super passionate or super religious or whatever, you go back and make them start out the opposite so that we can see there's a big change. The use of force, the story we read, how the characters start out really proper and educated and higher class, and then by the end he's crazy, and there's a big change because of that characterization early on. So that's it. A few FAQs that people have asked about. One, what does it have to be about? Anything you want, okay, as long as it includes these core things. It could be set in the modern day or in the past or in a fantasy world. It could be romantic or violent or whatever. Hopefully following some level of appropriateness, but we'll see how those specifics turn out. Another question I got was, can it be a sort of fanfic story? Can I use an existing universe? And the answer is no. Sorry, you got to make an original with your own characters. No names from anywhere else. You can't make a story about Ron and Hermione going on an adventure. But of course, you could take inspiration. You could make a story about some wizard kids going on an adventure and do a similar style of something else, but you don't want to infringe on anyone else's copyright. Finally, the last thing I want to say before I end this video is that this key part right here, what does your character want? You got to tell us that, and you want to tell us that pretty early. Like when we actually write, I'm going to say first paragraph. But, and this is really important, you don't have to tell us why. Okay? You don't have to tell us why. You might say, hey, this little guy wants to be the best xylophone player in the world. And I'll say, okay, great. I love him. Let's see what happens. You don't have to say, actually, his father was killed by a xylophone, and here's a big backstory. You don't have to do that. In fact, it's usually better not to. Okay? Tell us what they want. You don't have to tell us why. That's it. I want to end this video before it gets too long. Does anybody in the room have a question that we could throw in at the end? I see some heads nodding no. Then that'll be it for now, and we'll get going. Thanks.